This is Real Talk, the Customer Insights Show with Jenn Vogel, a top-rated live stream and podcast in the market research and insights industry. We stream live on LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube, and you can listen on all major podcast channels. Join Jenn and her guests for a weekly discussion around topics that will help you understand your customers better. Real Talk is presented to you by VoxPopMe, the leader in video research and ranked number 1 in qualitative research by Grit 2 years running. Here's today's conversation.
Hello, insights professionals, marketers, and everyone who wants to understand their customers better. I'm Jenn Vogel, and today we want to discuss customer service. This can certainly set brands apart positively and negatively, so it's a really critical topic. To discuss this today, I'm joined by author and customer service expert, Marsha Collier. Welcome to the show, Marsha.
Hi, how are you? Great to see you, Jenn.
Good to see you as well. Happy Monday. We've kicking off another great week, and looking forward to chatting with you today about this topic. So
customer service has just been a roller coaster lately. I wrote the first book in 2011 about proposing that customer service be done via social media. And, it's still out there. You could still read it. It's on Amazon. But the point is, it was well adapted by brands. And yet best practices have kind of just fallen by the wayside. So I'm glad we're talking about this today.
I am very glad we're talking about this today. And now, you just mentioned you wrote your first book in 2011, I think you said. Is that correct?
That was the book on customer service, yes.
Yes. And you've written 47 books total, including on customer service. You moderate a weekly Twitter chat on the topic. Tell us a little bit why you started focusing on that topic and why it matters.
Well, it's interesting. I started out in retail marketing in my career, and I worked in fashion marketing, and I worked for a newspaper, and we worked with department stores here in Los Angeles, and a new Saks Fifth Avenue was opening. And this is way before I got into my customer service thing. And the new general manager of the store was addressing the employees before their grand opening. And this is in an area where there are farms and ranches, a lot of money, but it's a different way of living. And he actually had to tell his customers, never mind if someone walks in with cowboy boots with mud on their feet. Everybody's a customer, and every customer deserves respect. So I learned that. And then from there, Peter Glenn, who was one of the first people who contracted with retailers, went into their stores and integrated with businesses and the employees as a customer and wrote up great consulting reports. He's written a book, It's Not My Job. And unfortunately, he's passed away, but he has such great wisdom on customer service. So that's where the nexus came for me. Finally, I wrote my first book on eBay in 1998, which is when eBay first started. And what I was seeing as e-commerce progressed throughout the years is that the ones that succeeded were the businesses that gave great customer service. I was friends with Tony from Zappos, and we'd talk about it a lot, that this was the key to getting customers in an online arena, which will eventually, and does now, have massive competition. So it makes a big difference. So that's where I got the idea, and it has proven out today. And unfortunately, I can't say that all the businesses are still sticking with it.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And you mentioned Tony from Zappos. They basically wrote the book on customer service. Like they're a case study in all the marketing classes, right? Of what good customer service looks like. Go ahead. What are you gonna say?
Well, Tony and I were friends before Zappos.
Oh, okay.
He owned LinkedIn, not LinkedIn, Link Exchange.
Okay.
If you are old enough, you remember there were banner ads on the internet. And I spoke with him because I was writing my book and I wanted to know the value of this type of advertising because I came from a marketing background. And we became friends and got to know, what was important. And a lot of what we spoke about at that time was that everything derived from customer service. So it was not long, but it was before Zappos that Tony and I had these discussions.
Wow. And you mentioned in your opening that you feel like a lot of the best practices for customer service, I mean, the story you described, they, say to the employees, everyone is a customer, everyone deserves respect, like baseline. You would think something maybe you wouldn't have to say out loud, but you do. I mean, are those some of the best practices that are getting missed, or, what's changed?
Well, we could talk about retail real quick. Have you ever walked into a department store and where the women in the makeup department, the salespeople in the makeup, they used to be all over you, if you remember. Now, not so much. They're busy pushing things in the back of the counter. The customer doesn't seem to be the focus anymore. And this is where it's falling down. And after the pandemic, where people were desperately trying to get items and things over the internet, and actually customer service wasn't a priority, it was just finding what they needed, that I think businesses let it slide down. I mean, I have seen some horrible examples. Major brands ghosting customers. Now, I'll understand a customer tweet out when they're really angry. And some of us get really angry sometimes. I have. But I try to stay polite. But if they don't have an answer and they don't choose to help, they're now just ghosting customers on social media. And what does this say? What does this say about how much they care about the customer?
Yeah, that's so interesting. There was a report that came out a few years ago because, while you talk about sort of a lack in customer service the way it used to be, there's also this movement for brands and different companies to be people first, customer centric, right? That's a big focus. And so there was a report that came out a few years ago about how companies believe that they're customer first and people first, and their customers are feeling a disconnect there. They're not feeling like they're being heard and listened to because, exactly like you said, I mean, years ago you couldn't, there was no social media. You couldn't necessarily shout about a challenge you were having with a brand, but now you can. Everyone's a publisher. Everyone has access to share their experiences, good, bad, and indifferent. And when people aren't feeling like they're being listened to or they're being ghosted, like that's a pretty horrible customer experience in an era where the expectations are higher than they've ever been.
Well, words are easy. It's really easy to say we're going to be customer centric. Sounds really good. But personally, I have observed within the last few months, for example, I own an expensive piece of electronic equipment. Something that was a subscription to that expired. I didn't get an email. I got no notifications, no push notifications. It just stopped working. I mean, it's like, hello. I mean, do you communicate with your customer? I see, and let's call telecoms out too. We won't mention names, but if you've ever had a problem with a telecom, T-Mobile used to be, I mean, remember with the old CEO, they were on top of it. It came from the top, and that's what has to happen. It has to come from the top because customer service is every employee's job. And there used to be customer service rules that if you worked for a company and you put the company's name in your social media bio, that you were a representative of the company and you had to be careful about what you agreed to and what you said to. And now a lot of that's just being ignored. And unless you have standards, you can't expect your employees to be following nothing.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. I wonder if there is some element of just assuming people know what what's expected. And there, like you mentioned, there's no standards or there's no documented process that,
There used to be,
take granted. Yeah, it sounds that way, right?
Well, in my book, I even mention, I mean, way back in 2011, Coca-Cola had a policy. A
Mm.
lot of companies, Ritz-Carlton has a policy. You can Google your favorite brand and social media policy. You can read it. You can see what they say. And, you know, with social media, you don't have to be the loud voice. You don't have to be the screaming voice, because I personally believe that you get better service if you're polite, even though you may be seething inside. I mean, I had one package that didn't deliver over a month. Now, how does that happen? That's even against the law. Something has to arrive within 30 days. And I'm seeing more and more of this now. So you just have to consider, we need to go back, and, you know, we're going forward in so many different ways, Web3 and everything. But bottom line, you have nothing without a paying customer. And CNN Plus learned that the hard way, didn't they?
Oh, they certainly did. Yes, I would love to dig into that as a case study. It was
Yeah,
very
right.
fresh. um, well, and you mentioned, that it's, some things need to be delivered within 30 days. I actually didn't know that that was a thing that
It's
was in place.
it's
But how?
actually it's
Yeah.
actually called the mail order rule, and it
Uh-huh.
extends to the internet. And you can Google it. You'll find it. Absolutely.
So,
And if
in
an
addition
item
to
is not delivered, they have to notify you and tell you either when it's going to be delivered or give you your money back.
Interesting. And so in addition to that, like what are some other ways that you would define like good customer service?
Listen. Listen to your customer who approaches you politely on social media. A lot of people now are learning to ask to go into DM, because maybe, if you embarrass the brand publicly, you may not get the greatest customer service. So you go into DM, but a lot of brands won't even do that. I was in a situation a couple of weeks ago where they didn't take it to DM, and I had to state my case publicly. And I'm going, you know, who's going to be happy with me then? How
Mhm.
am and yet it shouldn't be that way. You pay money to a service. They should have a website that's easily navigatable. It should have a page where you can find out all the FAQs, everything that has to be known to do business with them. And websites have become so complex that the trend where we used to say you have to have contact information on a website, I've come across websites with no contact information. You can't even figure out where these companies are. And where they are is not a problem. But let's say if you're dealing in e-commerce, maybe you'd prefer, because the shipping time will be different, them to be closer to you or further away. Everything, the more you know about a company, the more you're willing and wanting to do business with them.
Mm. Yeah, that seems a big disconnect with how a lot of companies operate these days because you're right. Certain companies like there is no customer service phone number you could call. It's only chat, or you don't know where they're located, or so that lack of information in and of itself is a bit of a poor customer experience.
And I mean, holy cow, those ads on Facebook. I'm sure you see them too. You see it, wow, that's a good looking outfit. Yeah, I might be interested in that. And you click on it, and yeah, it's a good looking outfit. It doesn't say what fabric it is. Who can I ask to find out what fabric it is? You find no information. A lot of times you just may go ahead and buy the item and then get disappointed and see that you have to return it to China, which is something you should really know ahead of time. Um, Facebook is not doing us any favors with these ads, and a lot of the brands we're seeing in online ads. So I recommend anybody as a consumer, just be darn sure you know who you're doing business with. Google the name. Um, See if you have the FAQs on the website. See if the business cares enough to be a part of your life. And that doesn't mean they have to hold your hands and take a walk with you. It just means that they're going to cooperate and give equal information to you as a consumer as you are giving to them. You're giving them, credit card information, or preferably you're paying through Google Pay or PayPal or something like that. You're giving your home address. You're giving them information. You have to expect the same in return.
So yeah, I think that's really interesting how you've answered that question. Like, what makes a good customer service? It's listening and communicating.
And acting. And acting. Once you've heard what the problem is, that's when you have to act. If you don't act and you just string the customer along, which unfortunately is happening so much, Jen, it's killing me. You have a problem and they just string people along, and we're working on it. And you'll be hearing from this department or that department, and you never hear. And unless you keep a calendar, okay, in 2 days, I have to ping such and such. I have to ping such. I mean, the Federal Trade Commission is going to get into this, and it's not going to be pretty because obviously the government's in everything else, but there's not as much defending the customer anymore.
Interesting. Yeah. And so let's say I'm a leader of a business, and, I just kind of woke up in the middle of the night and realized, oh my gosh, we have horrible customer service. Where would I start? Where would you recommend I start to kind of turn that around and build a good customer experience?
Well, first of all, I think you need to have people who have experience in customer service, people who have a passion for customer service. Passion is something you can't teach. People have to be empathetic. They have to care. So you staff first. You train seriously. You don't have to have a lot of people. And oh my goodness, your people on that chat can say, hey, there's only 3 of us here. I'm doing my best and I'll answer you as I can. All you have to do is be honest with the customer. Nobody's going to yell at a business for having a small staff. People respect the businesses they want to do business with, and the respect has to come back. So if you're going to build a team, do that. Make all your employees aware of a social media policy. Write it down on, I was going to say paper, but put it in an email, put it in a PDF, that as a representative of the company, you can't agree to certain things online, or you can agree to certain things online. You can point people in a certain direction. You can supply links to fact pages, supply links to customer service phone numbers. If you're East Coast, realize that the West Coast is still your customer. And I've been noticing lately a lot of East Coast companies, because I'm in Los Angeles, they switch off customer service at 2 p.m., which is at 5 p.m. on the East Coast, and it goes to an outsourced company. And I've found a lot of these outsourced companies don't have the passion for the business. Your employees have to have a passion for your business. Your employees have to care about the customer. Your employees have to realize that the revenue of your company is based on the people who do business with you. And that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that, the time zone consideration is really important for, wherever you are. If you're on the East Coast and you need help in the morning, or, we did do an episode a while back about, how to be accessible and how to, communicate when you're not available, when you are available, making that clear. It sounds like communication is really key in all those scenarios.
Simply, you can use, as a small business, there are services like Ring Central. There are services like Google Voice, where you can have a central number, which will forward calls to any of your devices or any of your employee devices. And, kind of how, when you call your doctor at night and one of the doctors in that practice is on call to take care of you, you can do the same thing with customer service with your employees. They become on call. That's a legit way to service customers after hours.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. And, we've been talking a lot about online experiences, e-commerce. social media, things like that. Like, what role does channel choice play in all of this? How do you create a sort of consistent experience between digital, phone, in person? We know that this is a trait of Gen Z, right? The expectation is that I'm having a consistent experience across all these different channels. So how do brands kind of, make sense of all that?
Well, real quickly, you mentioned Gen Z. If you remember in the old days, we used to hear that grandparents and grandchildren had a better relationship often than parents and children.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to be the relationship again now with boomers and Gen Z.
Mm-hmm.
They have similar ideas on things. It's kind of interesting. So, depending on siloing your customer doesn't make sense by generation. You have to understand your customer needs and wants. Rather psycho metrics than data with age and where they are, whatever, because you never know. I mean, I know people from Los Angeles who have moved away. So yeah, there's a lot of different things. And as far as what channels you use, I gave a talk at Portland State University years ago, and I called it Fish Where the Fish Are. If your customers are not on Twitter, don't have to be on Twitter. But you have to learn this through, instead of one of those dumb customer surveys, how do we do at the end of the call? You could ask the question in that email. Check here. Which social media platforms do you like best? You have your Facebook page, and having a page, unless it's manned, is almost futile. Will upset your customers more if there's no one there to respond. So depending, if you're advertising, TikTok, but realize that's not a really good customer service channel. You have to be able to converse and talk to the person at the other end of the line. So think Facebook, think Twitter, even LinkedIn. You can do that with messaging. But, certain venues of social media are purely entertainment. I mean, and they do great for marketing, digital marketing bonus. But customer service needs to be a more verbal platform.
For sure. Yeah. Definitely people need to feel like they're being listened to. And, you just touched on this kind of survey at the end of the call or whatever. I mean, there's all different ways that we can listen to and talk to our customers. Like, what role does that play in understanding our performance and understanding how customer service is actually doing? What are some of the best ways to actually foster that feedback?
Yeah. Again, at the bottom of the receipt, for free shipping on your next order, click and you have them listed. Which social media platform do you prefer? Click. You send them a free shipping. You send them a 10% off. Seriously, what's a 10% off on an order? I mean, really. It makes people feel like they're getting something. And in exchange for the data that you get from your customer, you need to give them something extra. And that's where customer service first comes in. Sending coupons, staying in touch. There are some companies, I don't know, I'm sure you get marketing emails, but there's one shoe company that sends me emails 3 times a day. I mean, it's ridiculous. Does anybody really need to hear from you 3 times a day? Can't you kind of wrap that up in every 2-3 days or so? You're making yourself more of an annoyance doing it that way than communicating with your customer, being a friend. You may have asked when their birthday is. Does your business send out a little happy birthday card? It should be.
Yeah, and I guess like how do companies measure if they're hitting the mark? Like, how do you know, okay, you're doing a good job, that the feedback from the customer is that our customer service is top notch? What are some of the ways that we should be looking at that and measuring that?
Well, at the most basic level, to me, it's the cash register metric. Are people coming back and doing business with you? Repeat customers are really, really important. And if people aren't coming back and you're getting more complaints than you are getting positive comments, yeah, you're not doing a good job. I mean, that at the most basic, I know we're involved in data and we're involved in so many ways to deal with the customer, but that's basic. And that's something you can figure out in 24 hours. What did I do yesterday that caused a major drop in business? Just look. Was it your shipping department? Was it your customer service department? Was somebody out sick? Maybe you need more employees. Keep evaluating on a daily basis. Survey the people who do customer service for you. Have a meeting once every a week, every 2 weeks, and sit together and discuss, their greatest hits of customer service issues that they've had each week. And more minds are better than one. Discuss them. Let people know. You want to give a reward for the best story of the week, the month? Fine. But involve your employees. Make them feel vested in the customer experience.
I love that point. I think it's so important for, the people who are on the front lines to feel like they're the conduit between the customer and the rest of the business, right? They're the ones that hear firsthand the challenges that are coming up or how they're delighting. And I think companies that have done a good job and figured out how to really reward those positive experiences that their employees create, that's so motivational, that gets people excited and they want to do more. We hear a lot about that in the industry, right? Like surprise and delight your customer. And the companies, again, that have figured out how to recognize that, reward that, repeat that throughout the frontline employees is, have really hit on something special. So I love that point of kind of using your customer service employees and your customer service teams to hear like what they're hearing directly from customers.
Well, and sales too can be also a great conduit for this, because often someone placing an order will let their feelings known to a salesperson. They need to pass on this information, and be sure you're using customer records. Have that software where each of your customers can be looked up easily. And you'll know about every call they've ever made to customer service, every order they've had. I mean, I've been a longtime customer of many businesses. And there are only a few who recognize that, where they'll say, thank you for being a customer since blah, blah. Or we really appreciate your business. Great thing to say. But unless you have the data in front of you as an agent, there's no way you can do this. You should have birthday, all the data you've ever gotten on a customer. And also I've found, don't hide the fact that you're recording calls. Don't have that buried in the print. Because a lot of times customers do not get an email back outlining the discussion or a transcription of the chat. And customers are starting to record calls too. So, be aware. Don't make it an arguing situation. You're not fighting each other. You're working together for satisfaction on both sides. So as I said, listen, then take action, then let the customer know what you've done. That's it.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic that, that it's a relationship, right? Like it's not just, you're serving or you're selling a product, right? It's a two-way street.
Well, back in 2011 in my book, I said, think of it like dating, right? You're romancing the customer. That was my quote from back in the day, because when you're romancing someone, you're on your good behavior. You're going to give it your best. You need to give the person at the other end of the transaction a feeling that you care about them, you care about their business, and you want to have them back again. I mean, that's simple. That's romancing and basic.
Yeah. And like you said at the start, kind of losing some best practices like basics. And I think, some of the companies that do it really well, it's nothing revolutionary that they're really doing. You were talking about, like, I've been a longtime customer of certain brands, and there's some that do a really good job of recognizing that, and others that not so much. I've been a loyalty member of JetBlue for ever, because JFK is my hub and that's their hub. And, the bigger airlines, they don't really recognize the elite customers as well. Whereas JetBlue, a smaller airline, last time I got on a plane, there was a handwritten birthday card for my son when I got on the flight, right? Like, that is surprise and delight, recognizing that loyalty and basic stuff, nothing out of, revolutionary that happened there, but I'm telling everybody about that experience.
Exactly. And two things about what you said. So hold me to this if I forget the other thing. Surprise and delight and wow.
Yeah.
That's fabulous. That's important. But if you don't have consistency, if your wow doesn't continue, again, you're romancing someone. If you go from good guy to bad guy or caring to not caring, you're not giving consistency, and your wow is a waste. Your wow is obviously a PR stunt. But like you getting the little handwritten card, I think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
I've been on American Airlines for years, and I was so excited when I passed my million-miler mark. And I tweeted to them, I said, what, no award? Nobody's come up to me on the plane with a free cocktail? I mean, I just got my 1,000,000 miles. And they tweeted back and said the brass band hadn't made it to the plane. Sorry. Little cute interactions like that. Right. But you see, the problem is, in a lot of brands, this isn't happening anymore. Right. It's gotten cold. Mm-hmm. I'm a huge consumer. I am very involved in customer service, and people online come to me with their issues, and I'll examine the threads. The warmth isn't there anymore. It's like the pandemic shot the soul of customer service.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you said the word earlier, empathy, right? You need to have passion for the brand and empathy for people. That's at the core of what's needed. And, I've had customer service experiences too, where the customer service rep is like excited and passionate and happy and using a lot of exclamation points and emojis in my chat. And I'm in the middle of a really big issue, and that's not being solved. And I'm like, if you use one more smiley face emoji, I'm gonna like break everything. Right? So I think it is that empathy piece that, like, read the room a little bit and try to just connect on a human level.
Gosh, you're so right on that one, because a lot of times you'll get the tweets or the other person in the chat, oh, that isn't the experience you should be getting from us. We don't like that. And you feel like going, gush, gush, gush. Yeah, I don't like it either. Right. I mean, it just infuriates the customer. And when your customer, the angrier you get your customer, the worse the situation's going to be. Yeah. Because that's where they're going to go on Twitter. And I've seen it done where they'll message a group of people and say, please retweet all this. And man, it goes and it gets brutal.
It does.
And yet the brand asks for this a lot of times. Mm-hmm. Empathy, sympathy, and respect. That's it. Real simple on both ways. I respect the business I'm doing business with. If I tweet to them with a question, I'll say, see you in DM for the answer. And I'll be back later, letting them know this isn't something, if it's not something I need to know like immediately, let them know I'll be back this afternoon. No rush. Just please answer me. Mm-hmm. And how do you think a customer feels when you go to your DM after your meeting or after whatever you did and there's nothing there? I mean, has that happened to you, Jen?
Probably. Yeah, I'm sure it has. I can't recall a specific scenario, but yeah, I mean, sometimes there are companies clearly that do it really well and are very responsive and solve the challenge. And I remember those. And then others where you don't get what you need and you probably don't buy from them anymore. That's people vote with their wallets, as you said, like that repeat business is how you measure the success of the customer experience.
Yeah, it's my cash register metric.
It's so true. And like you mentioned, it's been a rough couple of years. Everybody's struggling. I know every local business in my town is looking to hire help, right? We're having a hard time staffing. So people are tired, people are overworked. Rob Volpe, who was on the show a few months ago, everybody go out and read his book. He talks about how we're in the midst of an empathy crisis and how that's impacting business. And,
but not only that, here, whole other subject for a whole other show, but here we go. I'll just say it. It's time that people in customer facing jobs get paid more. Mm-hmm. When you've got executives, some executive at Twitter was making 17 million a year. And I was shocked by that because I know that there's people emptying waste cans at Twitter under $15 an hour. If a company is making that much money, I mean, it's time to spread it around. It's time to treat every level of employee with respect because your employees are everything to your business. It isn't going to do you any good, like at Starbucks or other companies, where they're starting to form unions because they feel they've been mistreated. Now, there's mistreated and mistreated, and there has to be some measure of what's really being mistreated and what's really petulance. But the point is, people have to pay rent. People have to pay electricity. They have to have a car. They have to have some sort of transportation. We have to, in this coming era, we have to consider service people a lot more important to society than we did in the past.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, topic for a whole nother day. But I can't thank you enough for coming on the show today. This is such a great chat. Thank you for your thoughts on customer service.
Well, if you can't tell, I'm passionate about the subject. And another time I'd love to do this and take questions from the audience and we can discuss them. That would be huge because we have to solve these problems. Customer service is what makes business run. And there's so many entrepreneurs out there who are starting businesses and need to go in the right directions.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again. Thank you everyone for listening in. We're going to be back with another episode next week when we talk to Aparna Bardwaj of the Boston Consulting Group. See you then.